What's up? Thanks for tuning in to the Wildcaster postgame. I'm Alec White alongside Michael Levin, Justin Spears from the Arizona Daily Star. And guys, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And this game pretty much encapsulated that from an Arizona Wildcats standpoint.
100%.
In tonight's 38-15 loss to ASU in the Territorial Cup. The same story pretty much written in every Arizona loss this season. Penalties, false starts, holding calls. We had two calls you normally never see in a game: an illegal fair catch and a flagrant foul. Not a flagrant foul.
Personal foul.
Yeah,
It's basketball season.
Flagrant unsportsmanlike conduct.
Player was kicked out. But same old recipe for Arizona, where the mistakes that we had seen all season long were encapsulated in this game.
New penalties, same issues, right? They were 1 for 5 in the red zone as far as scoring touchdowns. Season-long problem, worst in the country. In that regard, 12 more penalties for 96 yards. Just stuff you can't do and hope to win.
Yeah.
Right? You just cannot do those things and hope to win. -2 in the turnover table. You know, they were worst in the nation in turnover margin coming into this game. I thought maybe they had it in them, you know, for one Saturday to kind of be a different team, but they were pretty much the same team that we saw all year.
Yeah.
And as a result, they lost again. They're 1-11 for the season. It's their worst regular season record for a full season since 1957. They're 1-8-1. Last year doesn't really count. They were 0-5. I was talking to Alec after the game. How many times this year has Arizona been within one score in the second half, and then the other team pretty much goes on a run to finish the game?
Yeah.
Right? We saw that against Oregon. It was 24-19. Final score was 41-19. UCLA was 17-16. The final score was 34-16. Today, it was 21-15.
Yeah.
Final score 38-15. Broken record, same thing.
21-15, but it felt like ASU was up by a couple of touchdowns. Like, there were a number of times where I actually had to like double take the scoreboard, and I'm like, oh wow, Arizona's one shot away from actually really getting back into this game. And you know, I will give credit to Will Plummer. You know, this was a guy that we didn't really think was ever going to see the field, or at least I didn't think he was going to see the field after, you know, he got his first attempt as a starter against NAU. I thought his days were up at Arizona, but you know, it's kind of the definition of Will Plummer's season, or it's pretty much how it's gone, is this man fights. This man, every single time you're counting him out, this man just keeps coming back and it just keeps coming back. And you know, there were a number of times where Arizona could have easily folded. Like I think about the fumble that landed all the way on the 1 yard line, and it was bugs everywhere. And then also, you know, I know the pick six was kind of late, and that was pretty much like the final stamp on the game. But you know, this was he still continued to come out and fight for Arizona. And you know, I think the most yards in Territorial Cup history for a quarterback, passing yards wise,
by an Arizona quarterback,
and it resulted in a loss. So how often do we talk about like, oh yeah, these great numbers, right, historic numbers, but Arizona loses, and that's been the story all season long.
This was the 4th time this season that Arizona has had more yards than the opposition, yet lost the game.
Exactly.
Will Plummer passed for 346 yards. Jaden Daniels passed for 86 yards. This
also
is the 4th time.
Also
rushed for 86. 4th time Arizona has held the opposition to less than 100 yards passing. They went 1-3 in those games. Like, why does that happen? Not scoring touchdowns in the red zone, committing a bunch of penalties, which sometimes leads to not scoring touchdowns in the red zone, and losing the turnover battle.
Yeah.
I mean, they had 6 takeaways the whole season. You know, it was never that bad. Even like when things felt horrible under Marcel Yates, they never had that low a number of takeaways. So huge point of emphasis in the offseason, flipping around that turnover margin and improving that red zone offense.
And there was a sequence in the third quarter, I think it was the third quarter, where Arizona goes down, scores the it was the third quarter, scores a touchdown. It was to make it 21-15. They go for 2 in that situation, or don't make it, and then Dorian Singer gets ejected, and it felt like from that point on, ASU just kind of had a stranglehold on that game. That was what we talked about, the run at the beginning, going on and finishing 38-15. It just felt like when Arizona couldn't make it a field goal game right there, and then gave ASU short field possession because of the penalty on Dorian Singer. there are a lot of just momentum changing plays, and it goes back to what you said about the self-inflicted penalties.
Yeah, honestly, and I know Jedd Fisch and the coaching staff, they've done a great job of establishing their culture and giving this team a spirit that we haven't seen over the last few years. But again, time and time again, you kind of have to question discipline and coaching. Like the one thing that really just boggles my mind is you're coming out of a timeout, it's on the goal line, you're trying to stop ASU, and then next thing you know, last minute, Trayvon Mason's about to run on the field, and then he runs back because they don't want to get another substitution penalty. So they got 10 guys on the field, and then ASU scores. You're coming out of a timeout, and it's not the first time that Arizona's had substitution issues.
They also wasted a timeout on a conversion. I mean,
Exactly.
It was a 2-point try.
Yeah.
But still, it's not the first time we've seen that happen. There, of course, will be a new defensive coordinator here next year. Perhaps he will have a different system or a different way of getting those subs in and out of the game. I know that Don Brown had a lot of different defensive packages that he liked to utilize, and sometimes that created some issues for them. Rushing the ball in this game was another big factor. It seemed like ASU kind of had its way on the ground.
A lot of chunk
Arizona
yardage
did
plays.
not. Arizona finished with 50 rushing yards. They lost a ton of yards on that sacked fumble where the ball bounded from about the 34-yard line down to the 1. There was another sack soon after that really hurt their rushing total, and ASU ended up with 228.
Yeah.
And you're not going to win most games when that's the case.
Feels like half of Arizona's games this season have been kind of like that.
Yeah, so, a lot of work to do in the offseason as far as improving this team in the trenches.
Yeah.
That's going to be an ongoing battle for Arizona football. A lot of teams on the West Coast is finding those really good linemen. They're going to lose a bunch of defensive linemen too, and that was one of the strengths of the team this year. So that's going to be really interesting. I definitely think we've seen all kinds of breakdowns by the offensive line. We saw them again today.
Yeah.
That sack fumble, it was kind of a jailbreak situation. Like, Will Plummer had nowhere to go. He should have thrown the ball away or maybe gone down, lived for another down. But offensive line, season-long issue. We thought going into the season maybe it was the weak spot of the team. Another area they're going to have to address, maybe through the portal. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to find those guys, but there's going to be a ton of players in that transfer portal that they can look at and try to bring in here.
Arizona finishes the season 1-11, one win in Jedd Fisch's first season. How are we going to remember this year? There was a lot of growing pains, some positivity there. In the off season, there were certainly strides Arizona made with the product on the field, and certainly with the culture in the program and in their locker room. Jedd Fisch said today that even throughout all the struggles this season, there was nobody pointing fingers or division in the locker room, which we kind of have to take at his word there. But there are a lot of signs of growth, but there's also the reality that Arizona's 1-11. You're going to be the worst team in the Pac-12 for 2 years running, and
one of the worst Power 5 teams in the
teams.
country, maybe the worst Power 5 team in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, Kansas beat Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Arizona doesn't have anything like that on his resume. You go first, Justin, about summing up the season.
Well, I think Arizona fans at this point are like, okay, well, now what? This was the game that really defines the season. If Arizona came out and actually won this game, I mean, Arizona fans would be exhilarated right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they would be so happy with the current state of the program, because in less than a year, really, Arizona went from losing 70-7 to being competitive in this game. And if they would have won in the game, that would have defined the season, much like the Mike Stoops season when he first took over. I mean, Arizona had an awful season, but beating ASU, it just makes things a little bit better. And I talked to, a few guys earlier this week on my radio show who were part of the 2011 team where Mike Stoops got fired, and there was just so much up and down. Like, that season was just so weird. But to cap it off by beating ASU in Tempe, everything else that happened prior to that just completely went out the window, and they were able to celebrate that moment. But now that Arizona's turning the page to next season, Arizona fans are like, okay, well, we've now lost to ASU 5 years in a row. What are you going to do to make sure that that never happens again? What are you going to do to get the players in place so that way Arizona fans never have to experience another 20-game losing streak? Jedd Fisch talked about building this program from the ground level up. Well, now the foundation is laid. Now you got to keep building and keep building. And now next year it's okay, well, now what? Build, get some more wins, and move on.
Yeah, I think that we will look back at this season as one of transition if they're able to build on it, if they're able to get better. You know, if they are able to win 4 or 5 games next year and then 6 or 7 the next year, then you can look back on 2021 and say this is where it all started. We didn't, you know, like if you're Jedd Fisch, you can say, if you're Jedd Fisch, you can say we didn't have the wins, but we implemented our culture. You know, we changed the attitude within the program. We planted the seeds. We laid the foundation, whatever cliche you want to use. But they have to produce results at some point in time. You know, like, yeah, it's great. They didn't lose 70-7. They still lost 38-15.
Yeah.
So at some point, you're going to have to see some results. They might be able to, you know, to sneak in another good recruiting this upcoming class here. This could be a pretty good class.
Well, I was looking at the rankings on 24/7.
Yeah.
If it holds right now, Arizona will have its highest rated recruiting class in 15 years or 16 years.
So, but can you do that again if you have another 1-11 season or 2-10?
Can you convince the next class to be part
I don't
of the
think
rebuilding?
so. Like,
No.
I think you can still sell. This is new. We're just getting started. Come join us as we lay the foundation.
Yeah.
I don't know how long you can do that. So we're going to have to start seeing some results as soon as 2022. And they open it at San Diego State, which is going to be a tough game.
And christen that new stadium.
The schedule is not kind in that regard, but hey, you know, that kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, at some point in time, you know, you got to start seeing results.
If you're looking for more live coverage and coverage of today's event from the Territorial Cup, we've got it all on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. You can read everything for free. Justin's got a notebook from today. Lev broke down, you know, the game.
More to come.
In Arizona's
we just getting
failures
started
from this one. I got to buy the numbers piece. So much more Arizona football content and basketball too. We're recording this as Arizona Wildcats men's basketball is playing in Tucson, and the women's team won the Paradise Jam tournament.
Hey, you know, if you guys leave right now, maybe you can catch the post game at McHale.
We might be able to talk to Tommy Lloyd about this one. But thanks for joining us all season. This is it from our trio here.
Yeah.
We're going to have another podcast season wrap up, but you won't see our faces together on screen until the springtime and then again until August. So I don't know if you think that's good or bad that you're not seeing us anymore.
Thanks,
Faces for
everyone
podcast.
for tuning in.
All right, we'll see you guys next year.